All right, moving on. More false narratives news. False narratives around puberty blockers harm trans kids in the long run. Something we've been saying for the entire run of this show.
Yeah. Now, again, we have repeat offender, the Telegraph, and the publishing that it does. It releases articles that it doesn't fact check. It releases articles that are inflammatorily anti-LGBTQ plus and specifically trans antagonistic. It has been on a hard run to try and debase trans and non-binary individuals and the movement of people to be recognized as equals within the country. The article published was headlined Children as Young as 9 Prescribed Puberty Blockers at Sturgeon-Backed Gender Clinic. And it discusses the care provided by the Sandyford Clinic, the only youth gender identity service in Scotland. And they took all of their information from the European Journal of Pediatrics, which was published in September of 2021. And not only did they publish something that was out of date by a year, they also took that report and they condensed the information into a single data point. Whereas the report said that 79 children aged between 9 and 18 were referred for puberty suppressing drugs, and that is correct. The Telegraph failed to mention that that was between 2011 and 2019. So, over the course of 8 years, 79 children in a range of 9 to 18 were referred for puberty suppressing drugs. Now, while that is a gender identity clinic in Scotland, we also know that 9 is atypical for puberty, and the early onset of puberty is usually the primary reason why puberty blockers are prescribed. Typically, we see puberty blockers prescribed in the range of 12 to 14. So the question of why were people from 9 to 12 being offered that is not examined. It is not being looked after. So, the Telegraph does not care about facts. All they want to do is they want to make it as inflammatory and try to create as much scare as they can about gender affirming care.
Well, and the thing that I'm seeing again in like YouTube comments and things like the comments online is the equating of puberty blockers to chemical castration or basically rendering kids infertile,
Mm-hmm.
which it doesn't. They use puberty blockers and have used them for many, many years for kids between 6 and 12 who start what they call, it's a condition called precocious puberty, where you start puberty way too early. And it's actually very inconvenient and sort of puts the kid at risk to develop that early. So they give them puberty blockers to stop it and hold it off until a more normal time, and then the kids are taken off of that. We also talk about the narrative that puberty blockers are somehow the Wild West, and there's no data and no evidence that it works or does, what harm it does. And all of these things are just blatantly false. Just like I said, more of those false narratives that we're having to fight against because these things are being lumped together, which aren't true. And
Correct.
that's why we're seeing so much vitriol and so many people against puberty blockers because, again, it's one of those straw man false arguments that's easy to get voters
Mm-hmm.
to get fired up about. Taking 9-year-olds and rendering them infertile, that's something that it's very easy to get people to be like, yeah, that's bad. We should not be doing that.
Right.
And, again, it's so far from what is actually happening and what these drugs actually do. And yeah, it's very, very harmful to the entire population of trans folks.
Yeah, and Now, do want to take one point and make sure that this is stated. There are side effects that have been documented that go along with puberty blockers. They do last into adulthood and they do impact adults physically. There has been a lot of documentation of some very serious side effects for individuals who are left on puberty blockers for a length of time. Now, the problem is that no one has done a conclusive study on individuals who have been prescribed puberty blockers for precocious puberty and for gender affirming care. So it's still a very vague and amorphous argument that they want to make. Yes, there are serious side effects. Does it impact everybody? No. But if you stop and you listen to one commercial about a new medication on television, you're going to wonder, why on earth should I take that when they get to the complications and side effects?